The Utah Jazz regular season starts tonight, and we have all the information you need to get ready for this upcoming season. We have player previews, we have preseason trends, all of that and more coming up next on the Upper Bowl Perspective. Welcome to another episode of the Upper Bowl Perspective, a Utah Jazz podcast giving you elevated takes on Jazz hoops, no lower bowl access required. And Kyler, the Utah Jazz kick off their regular season tonight. We're recording this on Tuesday night, and they're going to be playing tomorrow evening. And as we've talked this week, getting ready for the season, it has been exciting to think about what the season is going to look like. Last year, the Jazz, as we mentioned in our last podcast, worst record in the NBA, 17-65, and they're heavy favorites to be a bottom four team again this year. But there are still a lot of bright spots that we can look forward to and things that we can keep an eye on that will make this Jazz season what we think is going to be ridiculously fun, even if we're not going to necessarily see the wins from the season in the win column. And that really all starts with the young guys on our roster. We have 10 players currently rostered with the Utah Jazz that are from the 2022 draft or later. So for Jazz fans, that is the Walker Kessler draft. And we have one of the youngest rosters in the NBA. And so as we look for this upcoming season, we wanted to spend the first part of this podcast really going through each of those 10 young players individually as we preview what they've looked like in the past, whether that's in the NBA or if they're rookies their last college season, and then also projecting what we think they can look like this year and what we're specifically going to be looking from each of these players going into the regular season. We have 10 players. We each took five that we're going to be discussing, and we're just going to go through them one by one. And we're going to start off with the player that probably everyone is most excited to watch for the upcoming season, which was the Jazz's top pick in the draft, Ace Bailey. And Kyler, I know you've been doing a lot of research from him um, over the past few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, what's not to love about Ace? There is a lot of buzz surrounding him, rightfully so. He has looked incredible at times throughout his preseason, and unfortunately, it did get cut short, but he did not disappoint at all during his preseason. So, like you said, what are we looking for from the young guys in this upcoming season? I think for Ace Bailey, what I most want to see from him is that he can show glimpses of how he's going to impact winning apart from scoring. I think his scoring prowess is pretty well documented and he's showcased it well in the preseason already. He was incredibly efficient. He was a great go-to scorer for the Jazz when he was available for them in the preseason. I don't know if there's much doubt about that. I mean, you can debate how much volume he's going to get in year one, sure, but I think there's a lot of confidence around his scoring ability. What I want to see is what can you do apart from your scoring, and that's what I want to see from him in his rookie year. He averaged 1.7 steals per game. His per game numbers were a little bit skewed just because he left that third and final game for him early, and so could have easily been two plus had he finished that game. And I like to see that. Some playmaking on the defensive end, as well as just good, knowledgeable spacing on the offensive end, not forcing it, staying within the team context offensively, and just showing that not only is he going to be a bucket getter in the NBA, but he's going to be a player that impacts winning on both ends of the floor.
I could not agree with you more. He was lights out as a scorer from the preseason. I mean, we knew he was a scorer coming into this season. We knew that that was his primary skill set. I don't think any of us expected him to shoot almost 60% from the field and over 40% from three in his preseason. Like that is really high efficiency. I doubt we're going to see that when he's playing against, higher NBA competition, but I think that we can agree that he's going to be efficient. Really what I want to see is how well he's able to move defensively, how quickly he's able to move on potential defensive switches or being able to possibly on the help side or even move out and defend some of the wing defenders depending on different matchups. He has a super long body and he's able to move pretty well. Watching him in college, it was a really weird Rutgers team. I feel like we didn't really see a lot of Ace's defensive effort when he was playing in college. We saw a lot more of that in the preseason. And really, what I want to see throughout the season is, are we going to see the same level of effort we saw during like the Houston Rockets game when he was guarding Kevin Durant? Are we going to see that on a night-to-night basis over the course of this Jazz season? And if we see that, holy dude, this is going to be incredibly fun for him. All right, moving on to another player now. While Ace was maybe the highlight watch of the preseason, the best player the Jazz probably had for Summer League was another young wing. That's a guy by the name of Bryce Sensabaugh. We've talked about him before, that he is just absolutely fantastic. In the preseason, he was our leading scorer, averaging almost 20 points per game, and he kept up his elite shooting numbers. He shot almost 43% in the preseason. But really, what I want to dive into a little bit more is how well he shot the ball last year, which we all know he's a great three-point shooter, but until you really dive into the numbers, I think it's hard to appreciate how elite he actually was last year. He shot over 42% from three in the 2024-2025 season, which was good for 15th best in the NBA. But if you take out all the players that had less than 300 attempts, he moves all the way up to eight. And that puts him around the same level of elite three-point shooters like Zach LaVine, Tarian Prince, Grayson Allen. I mean, like we're talking top of the top guys in the league. What I really want to see from him this year is he going to be able to see that that's going to be a consistent thing for him, which in the preseason he was able to build on that. The year before he shot less than 30% from three, so it was a massive jump for him in year one to year two. And I'd love to see, as he probably gets some more minutes, as people might recognize that he's someone who's on their whiteboard. We need to make sure that Bryce doesn't get open looks from three. As he gets more attention on the defensive side of the ball, is he going to keep that elite three-point efficiency throughout the rest of the season? Um, the other thing I really want to see from him is that we know that guy can score the bucket. He is so, so good as a shooter. I want to see how he can improve on the other side of the ball. He's not a good defender. That much has been very, very clear. And he doesn't have to be a good defender to be a valuable player for the Utah Jazz. But anything he can do to be less of a defensive liability is just going to make him that much more valuable. And I think could give him a better opportunity at being a starting caliber player rather than just a flamethrower off the bench. I'm super high on Bryce Sensabaugh. I think it's going to be really, really fun, but it's more about, can he keep up the three-point efficiency and can he do all the other little things that'll help keep him on the floor?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's well documented just how awesome of a shooter he is. I would love to see him improve on defense. I don't know if I have the confidence that that would be the thing that I would look out for him this year. For me, if I had to pick one thing for Bryce, he has like all turnovers are bad, but Bryce's turnovers are sometimes atrociously bad. Like he makes some decisions that honestly make you just laugh. Like what was going through that guy's head? So if I'm thinking something maybe more attainable for him this year, cut back on that stuff. That'd probably be my number one thing for Bryce.
Yeah, the turnovers were not great. And I think it's just one of those things where he's an elite shooter. It's just everything around the edges where he has one elite skill set. If he can just minimize some of the stuff on the outside, which turnovers you're 100% right on, that'll make him just that much more valuable as a player. Now, we've talked about two guys who we're super excited about, Ace Bailey, Bryce Sensabaugh, two of the most exciting players on the Utah Jazz. And now switching gears a little bit is to a player that had a really rough rookie season and trying to figure out what a success looks like for him this year after what was really one of the most abysmal rookie seasons we've had in recent memory. Kyler, Cody Williams, what do you got for Cody Williams?
All right. I want Cody Williams to put his added muscle to use. For a little bit of context here, we talk about how poor he played as a rookie, but to give you some actual numbers, overall his true shooting percentage was below 42, 41.9% last year with an effective field goal percentage of 39.1. More specifically, I want to focus on what he did at the rim. Cody shot just 45.6% on layups last year and had a 59% effective field goal percentage at the rim overall, including dunks and everything. That's just not good enough. And for a player whose skill set coming out of college was his finishing ability, it was not there for him last year. And people say it was also his shooting, but that was such low volume. I didn't really think that was going to be good. So, yeah, he shot 29% from three last year. I wasn't super surprised by that. I was lower than I wanted, but I didn't think he was going to come in and be a great shooter. I did think that you want that strength of his coming out of college. I can't remember the exact percentage, but I think it was like something crazy, like 80% EFG from at the rim in college, his final season. So that's not going to happen. But can he put that strength to use and get back to better efficiency around their league average? Can he get to that? And I think that's going to open up other parts of his game.
No, I think that's a super fair call out. Just being better at what he's at. He looks physically significantly different. When I saw the updated picture for the Utah Jazz roster, I was like, holy cow, like he has put on some legitimate muscle, and I think that's going to help out a lot. I think two other areas I'd like to see him improve just a little bit more. One is on the defensive side. One thing I love seeing in preseason is that he averaged almost a block and a steal a game. And with his body and how long he is, I'd love to see if he can be a little bit more of a defensive menace. I'm not expecting him to be an incredible defender, but I'd love to see if he can just really be aggressive on that end and get to the point where that's being more of a priority to see if he can get some of those takeaways and help swing some possessions for the Jazz. Um, just anything on that end, I think would be a really big win for Cody Williams. The other thing I'd love to see is his three pointers. You talked about it briefly. He shot less than two 3-point attempts per game um, in his last college season. And even though he shot almost 42%, it was on super low volume. I'm not expecting him to get back to that 40% range on 3-point shots, but I would love to see if he could get to like league average on just like catch and shoot threes. Not become an elite 3-point shooter by any means, but at least where he's somewhat of a threat. Um, that even if he has to stand in the corner or if he's at the top of the key, that we at least have a better idea that if he's open, then he can hit that shot. And I think that just makes him so much more valuable as an offensive player. If not only he can go to the rim, like you were saying, but also if he can space the floor just a little bit more consistently than he did last season.
Yeah, I mean, I think you want everybody to be at least a league average shooter, which is kind of why I went more specialized, just because that was his calling card coming out of college. And if it's not, and it's got to be something that he can do it at the league. You have to have something that you do. And I think there's two things that could end up being that, in my opinion. He could be a great driver and finisher, and he could be a great defender. And I went with the driving over the defense.
Yeah. And honestly, if he shows us anything this year, it's going to be a win. We're definitely going to be cheering for Cody Williams. And I'm just rooting for this guy, Kyler. Like, I cannot tell you how much I'm rooting for this guy and wish that he just has a better season this year than he did last year.
Certainly hope so.
Yeah. All right. Moving on to from our wings to our guards, we have a lot of fun guards that we can talk about. Three in particular, and I'm going to start it off by who I am most excited to see, maybe out of all these players for the Utah Jazz this upcoming season, and that's Keontae George. He had a really interesting season last year. Um, he got better on almost every statistical category. His points per game, he was close to 17. He had almost four rebounds and about 5.5 assists. And he still had somewhat high turnovers. He had almost three turnovers a game and almost a steal per game. He looked like a pretty solid player, but I felt just as I was watching him over the course of the season, it felt like a bit of a transition year. I actually went back this week and I read some of my notes on him from the draft and look at some of what people were projecting for Keontae George coming out of college. And every single thing I read said that he was a combo guard, that he's a guy who can play point or he can play two. He's a guy who looks for his own shot. He's a dynamic scorer. He can score at all three levels, et cetera, et cetera. And when we drafted him, I thought that he had a decent shot at potentially playing two guard for the Jazz. I think what we're slowly seeing is that the player he was in college may not be the best role or the best long-term success fit for him as an NBA player. And it seems like the Jazz have really been pushing him for him to take on more of that facilitator role, really take on the role of more of a point guard and look for opportunities to pass the ball and set up his teammates rather than always looking for his own shot. And I thought we saw that in the preseason pretty well. He had that one 9 assist game with 0 turnovers, which was super fun to watch. And just as I've watched him play, it's it's hard to really put it like an exact wording to it, but he just looks like he's more aware of his teammates. It looks like he's looking at them a little bit more. It looks like when he's getting the ball, either in transition or when he's setting up plays, that he's just more cognizant of where his teammates are at. And rather than looking around and driving to the basket or trying to, wiggle around to get his own shot, he seems much more focused on finding opportunities for his teammates. And that's really what I want to see from Keontae George this year is that Keontae George, I want you to be an awesome point guard in this league. Like that is what I want you to be. I want you to be an awesome passer. I would love to see if you can get up to 7, maybe 7.5 assists per game and really show the world that you are ready to fully embrace not the combo guard title, but that point guard title and help facilitate all these amazing scores and young players that you have around you. We know he can score. We know he has that ability, but what I want to see from Keontae is to finish that progression of came in the league as a combo guard, and I feel like he's slowly been positioning to a point guard. This year, I want him to fully embrace that role and completely go all in on being that type of player.
Yeah, I mean, it's been clear that the Jazz have been trying to make him a point guard since drafting him. And for me, it's a lot of really the similar things, all the stories. You hope that they're true. And for me, if I could pick one thing, I just want fewer possessions where it's like the my turn possession, where he's just looking for his shot. And he's usually, I mean, sometimes he can get really good shots. He's definitely one of the best at creating space to get a shot off on this team. But oftentimes, when you're doing the my turn possessions, it ends up in a pretty bad shot. So if we can cut down on those, it's going to cut down on his turnovers as well, which I'd like to see.
For sure. And we know that he has the skill set where I hope he still is aggressive when he has those opportunities. And I don't think he's ever going to balk away from that. It's just more about reading the situation, reading the players, looking at his teammates, and then making the best decision possible, which I think a lot of those are going to be passes. Some of those are going to be him creating a shot. It's just more about that decision making and being cognizant of I have an opportunity, let's go score, or damn, this is going to be a rough shot for me. Maybe I should get rid of the ball. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited to see it. And I think there's a possibility we see 7 assists a game out of Keontae this year. I think that's a legit possibility. Could be fun. All right. He's one of the longest tenured guards on the Jazz roster at this point. But we have another guard who just joined the Jazz who is incredibly exciting. And based on what we've seen in the preseason so far, he might be fighting for some of those rotation point guard minutes. Kyler, I know you've been looking at Walter Clayton. He was one of the guys you specifically wanted to talk about on this pod. What do you think is I guess just what can we expect to see from him this year? Like, what is realistic for him in year one?
Well, more what I want to see is what I've been prepping for this episode, and maybe not my expectations. I'm looking at hopefulness and what I want to see out of these guys. And with Walt, I think there's a lot of similar things that you can go back to the Ace conversation where his calling card coming out of the draft was that he's going to be able to shoot and he's going to be able to score off the bounce. And while that didn't 100% translate into great scoring in the preseason, I'm not really concerned about that to the point where I want to focus on that for this segment. What I want him to do is show that he can be a playmaker on both ends of the court. What I mean by that is I think his size profiles him a certain way, right? He's not going to be able to guard anybody other than point guards defensively. And he's small enough that you likely need him to be a point guard on offense too. But there are some questions into his handle and his decision making and his defense if he can actually be a starting point guard. So I want him to show glimpses, spurts, have occasional good games where he shows that he can do it. It's very hard for a guard, even one who's, pretty experienced coming into the league, 4 years of college, It's pretty hard for somebody to jump in at the lead guard spot and automatically be good. That's a very tough position to handle early on in your career. But have the good games. And one game I want to shout out in particular in the preseason was the Dallas game. This is a game where he only shot 1 for 7, only had 8 points, was not a good scoring night. He had 3 steals and 7 assists. I think Walt is probably the best guard we have in terms of playing the passing lanes. And he's not the longest player, but he has great anticipation. So I don't think he's going to be a great on-ball defender, but can you be a playmaking defender? And then the 7 assists goes to show, can you run the offense a bit? He did have 3 turnovers, so it wasn't perfect, but he showed that he can impact the game apart from scoring. And that's really what I want to see. I want to see games like that, whether the shots go in or not. Show me the other games, other parts of the game that you're impacting.
Couldn't agree more. I had super similar notes on him. I think just the one thing I might be a little concerned about, which you mentioned, is the turnovers. He averaged 2.5 turnovers a game during the preseason, and it is just so tough to come in and be a quality point guard as a rookie. Like very, very few players are able to come in and do that. And so on the defensive end, completely aligned with you. And I'd really just love to see if he could limit maybe some of these mistakes on offense. I'd love to see if he could maybe limit some of those turnovers, be someone who, when the ball gets to him, he can move it around quickly. I don't expect that his stats are maybe going to jump off the page this year. I think he's going to have games where he's going to have moments where he's going to look really good, but it's really more about can he continue to use his 4 years of college experience and that March Madness run that was fantastic and really mature into that role of a point guard right off the bat where he can limit mistakes, make those winning plays like you said, and show value to the roster, even if he's not maybe lighting up the stat sheet every night.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of faith that he's going to have low turnovers this year, which is why I didn't say it. Just because rookies always do when they're lead guards. They turn the ball over. It's what they do.
Yeah. Yeah. It's going to happen. It's just how much is it going to happen? And we will start finding that out tonight when we watch the Jazz play. The last card we got to talk about was a little bit of a revelation last year, at least from a passing standpoint. Isaiah Collier. Um, if you would have told me when we drafted him that he was going to start 46 games for us last year, I would have been like, really? Like that's pretty impressive that Isaiah Collier, second round pick, is going to start that many games right off the bat. And he actually performed pretty well. He had about 9 points a game, 3 rebounds, but really what he showed he can do at the NBA level, basically from day one, is pass the ball. He averaged 6.3 assists a game last year, which was best for 16th in the league overall, which I think was really, really exciting. I think we can expect that he's going to continue to be a solid passer and that he's going to be able to facilitate in whatever minutes he gets for the Jazz. Really, what I want to see growth from him for is on the scoring side of things. He was really inefficient last year. He only shot 42% from the field and he shot less than 25% from three. And even from the line, he was sub 70%. So he did not shoot the ball well at all last year. And if you're going to play guard in the NBA, you've got to be at least semi-competent as a shooter. So this year, really what I'd love to see is for him to continue to do all the things he did last year on the passing standpoint, but also just improve his efficiency as a scorer, as I think that is one of the things that could potentially keep him off the floor in his career down the road if he can't at least, even getting to low to mid 30% from three would be a huge jump for him, and it would make him much more viable as an offensive player.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty clear with Isaiah. He's one of those guards that's an automatic paint touch, but you got to be able to shoot to some extent. I don't know if I really have faith in him as a shooter, even though I was higher than Isaiah than on Isaiah than Cody coming out of the draft. The one thing that I would say would leave me hopeful is he did get a rod removed from his shooting hand this offseason. So does that make him more comfortable? Hopefully. For me, I actually think Isaiah Collier could use his strength and athleticism to become kind of a defensive hound. And I'd like to see him try to take on that identity for the Jazz, be kind of a dog defender because we really, really lack backcourt defense. And I think the ceiling is limited for everyone there, but Isaiah's just the most purely explosive and strong out of those guys. So he probably has it's either he or Keontae for the highest ceiling there, but we have a bigger sample size of Keontae, so I don't know. I'd love to see Isaiah almost have like the mentality Colin Sexton did defensively, but actually be good at defense
Yeah.
would be kind of my goal for him on defense.
Yeah. No, I really like that call out. I went to a couple of Jazz games last year, and one of my like big takeaways because everything always looks different in person than on the TV. Like there's just certain players who look a little bit different, who look more physically intimidating in person. It's just one of those things. And I actually had pretty close seats last year, and Isaiah Collier at one point was inbounding a pass, like pretty close to me. And that boy is thicker in person than he looks on your TV screen. Like he is wider, he looks stronger, and he just looks even more physically gifted when you see him in person compared to other NBA players than he looks like on a screen. Um, it would be fun to see him use some of those physical gifts in that size to be able to become a better defender because he definitely has the physical tools to be able to do it. All right. Well, our backcourt and our wings are all covered, and now we have four more players that we got to kick off.
Well, there's Tanji. I wouldn't classify Tanji as a big.
Oh yeah, yeah, we got to
I
go with
mean,
Tanji. I
yeah,
forgot Tanji.
yeah,
Kind of forget he exists sometimes, but I'm
he's
glad he's
signed
here.
to just a two-way, so we don't need to spend a ton of time on him. But I did have John Tanji on my list. I had all three rookies, funnily enough. And really, I just wanted to see him tear it up in G League. There's not much to say here. Oh, the one thing I will say, in addition to that, I'd like to see him take some tips from Bryce in terms of how Bryce translated his game from college to the NBA. I think they're both players that are going to have to rely on strength more than explosiveness. Neither's really all that explosive of a player, and they're explosive enough to win in college, but not really in the NBA. So I'd like to see John learn from Bryce and how he's transitioned his offensive game coming into the league because I think he's going to need not to become Bryce, but to learn some of those things that Bryce has changed since he's come into the league.
No notes. Go
All
John
righty.
Tanji. Let's see how he does. All right, moving on to our front court, we have three more guys that we need to discuss. And let's talk about who, believe it or not, is the longest tenured player on the Utah Jazz's roster. He's only been here since 2022, but he is now the old guy in the locker room and the steady presence for the Utah Jazz, not only from a roster standpoint, but also from a defensive standpoint. And I want to turn this into a Walker Kessler appreciation dump. Like, holy cow. I sometimes forget because we watch him so often how truly good he is at some of the things he does. He is an excellent rebounder. He was fifth in the league last year in rebounds per game, like a truly elite rebounder. He also led the league in offensive rebounds per game last year. Fantastic offensive rebounder, which is a super valuable skill set. He's an elite rim protector, almost 2.5 blocks per game. I believe he was top five or six last year, but just really, really good at protecting the paint. And he is just one of these more traditional bigs who has come in and has really raised the floor for the Jazz's defense in a way that is so significant that I don't know if he always gets enough love for it. And so I just want to say, Walker Kessler, thank you for being on the Jazz and thank you for providing that steady foundation night after night. He has a couple of elite skill sets in the paint and as a rebounder and everything else, but we've seen flashes of him being able to do more and to really round out some of his skill sets. Right now, the league, especially in the Western Conference, we're seeing bigs who have more diverse skill sets. We have Nikola Jokic, best player in the world, where he's able to do a little bit of everything. We have Jokic Jr. with Alperen Şengün and just seeing what he's been able to do. Where he's a passer, he can shoot a little bit. And although Kessler, I don't think is ever going to be as diversified in his skill set as maybe some of those European players are. I would love to see if he can build on some of these skill sets outside of his core skills and see how he can impact the game a little bit more in other ways. Last year, he shot 0.6 3-point attempts per game. I would love to see if we can get that number up like to triple that. See if we can take just a couple 3-pointers a game. He shot right around 20% last year. We're not trying to win games. Let's see if we can get him more comfortable as a 3-point shooter. And maybe down the road in a couple years, that can actually be something where if we hit Kessler at the top of the key or in the corner, we can actually have some level of confidence that it's going to go in. Let's give him the opportunities. There's literally no downside to it right now. Let's see if he can do it. He also only played in one preseason game, but he had 8 assists in that game, which was really, really fun to watch just to see him being a facilitator. And although I don't expect him to, have 8 assists a game throughout the season, I would love to just see as he takes opportunities to hit some of our elite 3-point shooters, like see if there's opportunities where he can find Sensabaugh on the wings or see potentially how he could work with Ace Bailey. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how those two work together. But I would love to see if we can get Walker Kessler just more cognizant of passing opportunities and utilize some of that passing skills he showcased in the preseason and just see if we can see it a little bit more in the regular season to take those opportunities to help some of these other guys get more efficient shots when, he's getting swarmed in the paint. So, Walker Kessler, I love you. This is not a dig on you at all. I just think that as great as you are, you have even more to offer. You can expand your skill set a little bit more, and I think that'll make you an even stronger player for this franchise.
Yeah, for Walker, unfortunately, the Jazz and Walker could not come to an agreement on a contract extension. That deadline just passed earlier this week. And I think a lot of it is because of the fact that he excels in his role, but his role is currently what he's shown so far limited, which goes to show, yeah, I think uh, more versatility on the offensive end, and then I think becoming more than a shot blocker and rebounder on defense. He's our best defender, but I think he's more of a shot blocker right now than a true paint protector. And I'd like to see that change as well.
Yeah. No, it was definitely a little sad that we didn't see an extension take place. He is going to be a restricted free agent next offseason. And I really hope that he shows that continued improvement and that we can really lock him up long term because I think when you have a guy who raises your defensive floor that much, it makes someone like a Bryce Sensabaugh's job so much easier. It makes an Ace Bailey's job so much easier. I think after the whole Rudy Gobert situation where we paid a lot of money to a guy who had a limited skill set, I think the Jazz front office might be a little hesitant to dish out a ton of money to someone who has shown they are a little bit more limited. So I'd love to see Walker Kessler maybe assuage some of those potential concerns the front office may have, and that we can lock him in for several more years with the franchise. All right, we have seen a lot of Walker Kessler in the last couple years, and we have another big who we saw almost nothing last year because he got injured. Kyler Taylor Hendricks, super fun to watch in the preseason. What are you hoping to see from him this upcoming year?
My hopes for Taylor is, I mean, congrats on the recovery. He looked great in the preseason, as you said. Um, Really, the situation with Taylor is he's entering year three and he's played 42 NBA games or something like that. I might not be 100% accurate on that, but I'm pretty sure it's low 40s. So I think the things that come with experience, specifically for me, I'd like to see him become a little bit more aware on both sides of the ball. I think Hendricks has the upside to be our best defender this year if he wants to be, and with experience. I think his lack of experience is going to make it so he's not, but I think he could make strides towards being our best defender. But I think he gets caught sometimes almost trying to be a help defender in the paint, and so he'll let his guy, get a back cut on him. And so just some general kind of mental lapses that ultimately come with inexperience. And I'd like to see him stay healthy and play enough minutes that those just kind of start to work themselves out. Because I think he has an extremely complementary skill set on both sides of the ball. That once he gets comfortable, the game slows down. I think he's just going to be rock solid. If I had to like rank how I view the Jazz young guys, he's very, very high up there for me just because I'm very confident in his ability to be a complementary player once he gets, the game slows down for him.
Yeah, I remember us talking about it when he got drafted by the Jazz, and even on our boards leading up to his draft, and we both had him in our top 10. And one of the things we talked about specifically was his versatility, just about how, he's big, he can help defense, he's long, he can shoot. And it just seemed like he could do a little bit of everything and where he could potentially fill multiple roles for a team. And I think everything you said for me, just what you want to see from him this year is what I want to see because I want to see how versatile is he really and how many roles could he potentially play? Like I would love to know is he strong enough now that he's put on all this weight and muscle where he could potentially play like a small ball five in some sets? Could he play with maybe some other big players like where could we play a jumbo lineup where it's him and Ace and Markkanen and Kessler? And can he work within that system in a way that's going to be effective with those other players? And I think he has all of the skill sets to do that. It's still somewhat theoretical because we only saw 3 or 4 games of him last year, and we didn't see him play much his rookie season either. So I think we have a good idea of what he potentially can be. And this year is really, I think, the year where, assuming he stays healthy, we're going to find out if all of these theoretical things that just turns him into a super versatile type of player that can play with a lot of different guys, if that's actually a reality. All right, last player we have to discuss is Kyle Filipowski, and I've actually been really excited for him. If you look at just his raw stats from last year, they were not very good. His efficiency was bad. His raw stats were bad. He averaging less than 6 points a game, less than 3 rebounds per game. Like it looks really, really disheartening. What I want to focus on is how well he played the last 10 games of the season because the first half he looked a little bit rough, but he really came into his own and looked much more comfortable on an NBA court towards the last maybe 20% or so of the regular season. Just his last 10 games, if you look at his points and just his stats across the board, he was almost 15 points a game, almost 10 rebounds, and 2 assists. He also had an incredible game against a bad Portland team where he scored 30 points and had 18 rebounds. And during the last 10 games of the season, he did hit 11 threes. Granted, it was still on low efficiency of around 20% make rate, but he just looked so much more comfortable out there. He looked like he belonged. And rather than looking like a rookie, where honestly, the first half of the season, whenever I watched him, you could see flashes, but he looked uncomfortable. He looked intimidated. And by the end of the season, he didn't really look like that in the same way. What I'm really hoping from him is that he's going to continue to build on that over the course of this season and really show that he's more of the player we saw during the last 10 games than he was during the first few games. I'd love to see him continue to take threes. I'd love to see if he could get a little bit better at those. That was one of the things that people loved about him coming out of the draft is that he was supposedly going to be a stretch big. He hasn't shown the consistency in shooting to really justify that, but I don't want to see him stop taking them because he's going to need those reps to see if he can actually get to that level. And I also want to see him continue to rebound. He's a pretty skinny guy. He has a negative wingspan, and I want to see him continue to fight over those defenders. I want to see him position himself well. I want to see him continue to box out because he doesn't really have the physical profile where he's going to be able to get a lot of rebound with just depending upon some of his physical traits other than his height. And it's really going to be his intentionality as a defender and how he's setting himself up, which I think is really going to show how well he's going to be able to perform as a consistent big man in our rotation going forward. So my hope for Kyle Filipowski is that he plays really solid minutes off the bench. He continues to be confident in shooting the ball and that he continues to build upon some of those rebounding statistics that he showed us towards the end of last season. So not really anything too major to go over with him. It's just I'm trusting that the guy we saw towards the end of last season is more the guy that we can expect going forward. And if that ends up being the case, then I think we're going to see a really strong sophomore year from Kyle Filipowski.
Yeah, and he definitely carried the end of last year into the summer league where he was MVP in the Las Vegas summer league. Uh, Honestly, for Kyle. I just have rebounding. This we're going to get into this a little bit later into the episode. Some rebounding concerns. I think Kyle Filipowski being a good rebounder is kind of weirdly important for the Jazz this year. So I just want to see him to be a better rebounder. I'm not saying he was necessarily a bad one, but I do think he has room to grow there. Whereas a lot of the other improvement areas of the game, I'm not sure how much he is going to improve them. I think rebounding is an attainable one.
Yeah. And that's going to help the Jazz so much from a competitive standpoint if they can rebound or they have a consistent rebounder off the bench. Like that just opens up the possibilities of them avoiding longer runs or anything like that. So I think he definitely has the ability to do it. We just need to see him continue to show that night after night. All right. Well, if you're still with us this far into the podcast, you just got a preview of 10 really exciting young players for the Utah Jazz. This is the reason we're going to be watching this year, and we will continue to keep you updated on how all these players continue to develop over the course of the season. Now, in addition to talking about the players that we've seen and what we're hoping for this year, we also wanted to take a deep dive into the preseason and see if there's any trends that we can look at that can help us project what we can expect and what we can hope the Jazz will focus on as we look into this upcoming season. Now, we're going to say this with the caveat that the preseason is the preseason. It's not always going to translate directly. We have players sitting out who are vets. We have a lot of young guys getting a lot more minutes. The rotations are going to be different. It's not the same type of basketball you're going to see during the regular NBA season. However, by looking at the individual performances, looking at some statistical similarities across the four games, there are some things that we can take a look at that can help give us a better idea of what we can expect from this Jazz roster. So, Kyler, we've each gone through and we've chosen one good trend that we saw and one maybe not as good trend that we saw. And we're going to talk about both of those. I'll go ahead and I'll get us started off with what I at least thought was probably the most positive trend I saw throughout the preseason, which is that the Jazz, despite all of their other obvious flaws, they know how to score and they can shoot the basketball. They played four preseason games against the three Texas teams, the Rockets, the Mavs, and the Spurs. And they lost to all three of those teams to the Spurs in overtime. And then they beat the Portland Trail Blazers in their final game. And the Rockets, Mavericks, and Spurs are all projected to be really solid teams next year. And they played a lot of their starters in those games. And the Jazz had an effective field goal percentage that was better than the Spurs and the Rockets in those games. And it was less than 1% lower than the Blazers and the Mavericks. They shot the three ball better than their opponents in three out of the four games. And during the Rockets game, they shot almost 45% on 45 attempts, which was just a really impressive shooting outing from the team. And it gives me a lot of hope as to what the Jazz can be this year. We know they've got flaws on defense. We know they're a young team. We know they're going to make mistakes. But last year, they were 24th in offensive rating. I think we've shown that we can be efficient enough, especially seeing how efficient Ace was in the preseason and growth from guys like Keontae and Kessler and Bryce Sensabaugh, hopefully playing a bigger role this year, that I don't think it's crazy to think that we can make a fairly sizable jump, at least in our offensive rating this year, even if we're not going to be a great team by net rating. So that was one trend that I saw is that I was expecting the Jazz to be significantly less efficient than those three Dallas teams who have, much stronger, more developed rosters than we do. And the fact that we were able to go toe to toe or even outperform them was something that I personally found to be super, super exciting, where they might lose a lot of games, but maybe a lot of these are just going to be slugfests and we're going to see, them score 120 plus multiple times this season, even if they result in a lot of losses, which is going to make for a lot of fun basketball.
Yeah, I mean, if you like scoring at least, and I do agree. I think if we ended up 24th again, that would be a disappointment. I think a lot of Jazz fans are not only hopeful but expectant of an increase there. Not only Lowry probably playing better than he did last year too, and more often is going to help that out as well.
Yeah, super exciting. We will see how they play through these first few games of the season and see if that trend continues. Kyler, I know that you had another thing that you saw throughout the preseason that got you really excited? What's that one?
Yeah, the one that got me excited, I think I would say maybe the cause of what got you excited, their strong shooting, was due to their passing. I really liked what I saw from the Jazz offense schematically, and that leads to a kind of offense that's going to have a lot of assists. So, for a little bit of context, last year the Jazz were 19th in the NBA with 25 and a half assists per game. In the preseason, that was up to 28th, which if that was last year, it would have been tied for the eighth most assists per game. So pretty sizable jump. All of a sudden, you're top 10 in the NBA and something if you can keep that up. Again, there is caveat about the level of competition, but what I really liked is that the Jazz were running some stuff through their bigs. I think the addition of Nurkic, certainly at the time of the Colin Sexton trade, had a lot of people skeptical, but the things that Will Hardy can do with his off-ball actions with Nurkic at the top of the key, dishing it out on the DHOs, setting those really nice screens. He is by far the best screener the Jazz have had since Rudy left the team. And I think getting the centers more involved than we've gotten accustomed to um, in recent Jazz games helped unlock that. We had a 7 assist game from Nurkic in the first preseason game, and then the lone Walker Kessler game was 8 assists. Are you going to get that a lot? I don't think so. The other two Nurkic starts were only 2 assists each time, but even if it's not always going to lead to assists from the big men, I just think getting them involved with so many players that are more finishers than they are shot creators on this team is going to really help out increase that offensive rating from 24th. And that's probably the number one trend, that uptick in assists and involving of the big men. That's what I want to see the most carry over into the regular season.
Yeah, I was falling in love just a little bit with Nurkic, watching him just on the elbows and how he was passing. And I'm hoping that we can see Kessler pick up some of that a little bit more as well. He had that one 8 assist game, which you mentioned, which was awesome. And just seeing ball movement from not just the guard position, I think is going to be super important as we try to keep that offensive efficiency high because we have a lot of guys who could knock down the ball. We've talked extensively about how great of a shooter Bryce is. We've talked almost nothing about Svi Mykhailiuk, who is an offseason addition, who's also a pretty solid shooter. We have Ace Bailey, we have Walter Clayton. Like there's just a lot of guys who could theoretically be solid shooters from behind the arc. And as we have more individuals looking to help facilitate those opportunities, I think it's just going to lead to an incredibly fun offensive team to look at.
Just to clarify, Svi was with us last year
Oh
um,
yeah.
in what was ultimately a very forgettable Jazz season. But
Yeah, Svi. Hopefully he's a little bit more memorable this year, for sure. All right. Let's go into a couple of the trends that maybe caused a little bit more concern. Kyler, let's have you start off with this one because I think yours leads into a larger discussion.
yeah, yeah, my your positive thing led to my positive thing, and then my negative thing will lead to yours. So for me, the biggest concern in the preseason was the rebounding. So the Jazz were out rebounded by double digits in 2 of the 4 preseason games. They averaged throughout the preseason 41 and a half rebounds to their opponents, averaging 49 and a half, so 8 lower per game. Offensive rebound wise, we had 10 per game and the opponent had 16 and a quarter. So more than 6 offensive rebounds per game more from our opponent. I do think part of that was that Walker was only there for the final preseason game. That was actually the closest rebounding game that we had was against the Blazers when Walker was there. I also think part of that is due to their really young center in Klingon, but um, it was really worrying. I felt like this Jazz defense is already there's a lot of words that you can use to describe the Jazz defense, but when you actually do get the stops, you need to end those possessions. And we just weren't doing it. A lot of them you could narrow down to small sample size because they were longer rebounds and such. But apart from the center position, we just don't have a lot of guys that you're confident are good rebounders for their position. So this is something that's concerning, not only because of what the numbers show, and because I don't know if we're really in a place to fix it all that much unless Taylor gets a lot better at it, unless, like I mentioned before, if Flip can become a good rebounder, or like playing Kevin Love consistent minutes, which he does things for you, but that's taken away from the young guys at that point. But Kevin Love will certainly help the rebounding, but he was playing center for us in the preseason, which I don't think he'll do quite as much in the regular season. He'd probably play more four, which at that point, then you have two good rebounders on the floor, which would help. But I don't think there are easy solutions, and the numbers were pretty concerning in the preseason on the rebounding front for me. We allowed 19 offensive rebounds to the Rockets, 18 to the Mavericks were our two worst, and
Mm.
we never had more than 13, which is our final game, which did have Walker Kessler.
Yeah, the rebounding numbers definitely jump off the board, and I agree that there are some paths that we can take that might help close that differential. Obviously, with Walker playing more minutes being the biggest one, but with the roster we have, we are somewhat limited, at least in the short term, in terms of how we can potentially narrow that gap. I think looking more long term with the Jazz is that we have a lot of guys who are plus sized for their position, where they're either longer or taller than the average player. They're just young and they're still skinny and they're still trying to develop and get a little bit stronger. Like we saw with Taylor Hendricks, he put on a ton of weight this offseason. Now that he's gotten a little bit older and he's been able to develop his body. And I think we're hoping we're going to see better rebounding out of him. And I think down the road, we can hopefully see that with guys like Cody, who made similar additions to his physique over the offseason. Ace is still super, super young. He's a fantastic player, but he's not super strong yet. He's not super built. And I think even though in the short term there's not really maybe a super clear path to becoming an awesome off rebounding team, I do think that we have some personnel that if they continue to develop, continue to get stronger, continue to work in the offseason to develop their strength, then maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, we're going to be in a much better position because of how we've chosen to prioritize drafting players who in general tend to be bigger than their positional average. Um, Leading to the rebounding numbers that you discussed, it ties in perfectly with the concerning trend that I saw, which was field goal attempt comparison per game. Um, that really jumped off the board to me really immediately. Over the 4 games that we played, we were anywhere from 6 to 11 less field goal attempts per game on basically the same number of possessions every single game, which is concerning because how are these teams getting these extra possessions and these extra shots? And when I was looking at it, I immediately went to turnovers, and our turnover percentage was not that big of a differentiator. Like, yeah, there were some, especially in the first game versus the Rockets, we had a higher turnover percentage. But against the Spurs and the Blazers, we actually had a better turnover percentage than them. And in Dallas, we only had one more turnover than they did. So when you dive into the numbers a little bit more, and when you actually watch some of the Jazz, those offensive boards are leading to a ton of second chance opportunities and second chance points, which is really making it more difficult that even if the Jazz are scoring at a really efficient clip, it doesn't matter if you're taking 6 or 7 less, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever less shots a game. It's just super hard to crawl back from that kind of just opportunity deficit. Um, I think getting Kessler is going to help. I think potentially Hendricks getting more rebounds is going to help. But I think we're going to consistently see this trend throughout this season where we don't really have the personnel we need to close that rebounding gap. Where I think most games we're going to be 5 plus less shot attempts per game than our opponent, just because we're going to struggle to get some of those rebounds.
Yeah, more shots is more good. And
More shots, more good.
that wasn't a strength of ours for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see how some of these trends, if they carry over into the regular season or not. We're definitely going to be keeping everyone updated on the podcast over the course of the season as some of these trends changed. So if you're curious to see if the Jazz get better at some of these statistics or get worse, or looking at other trends, make sure to tune in every single week because we're going to be looking at the numbers on a weekly basis and telling the story that the numbers tend to show us. Moving into our third and final segment of the night. This is honestly the segment I've been most excited for. Kyler and I are super competitive. We have known each other for what, like 23 years now. It's been a long time that we've known each other, and ever since I can remember, we have both been pretty competitive people. We love looking at our draft guides every year and a couple years down the road seeing who had the better takes from a draft perspective. Really any aspect of our life. There's just this good-natured competitiveness that we have between us where we love to find an opportunity to say we had the right take or we did this better than you did, as we obviously support each other in the aspects of our lives. So throughout the rest of the season, we want to have a quick third segment right at the end of our podcast where Kyler and I have a chance to be a little competitive. Every week, we're going to play a game where we're going to change it up from week to week. I'm sure we'll bring some back over the course of the season, but we're going to play a game. And then on the next week, during the beginning of this third segment, we're going to report on who won that game, and we're going to keep a tally over the course of the season. If anyone listening has any suggestions on what the reward and or punishment should be for the end of the game, feel free to drop that as a comment. We will take those into consideration, and we'll report on that in the coming weeks. So the game today is based on one of the beloved movies from our childhood, Little Rascals, where they sing that song, I got a dollar, I got a dollar, I got a dollar, hey, 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 hey. We're basing our game off of that, where we're pretending that we don't live in Utah and gambling is legal, and we can go onto some sort of online sports book, and we're pretending that we have a dollar to bet on any bet that we want on the Utah Jazz's opening night. So we've gone through, we've looked at the sports books, and we have identified how we want to divvy up that dollar into various different bets. We have no idea which bets we took or how much we've allocated towards different bets. But after the game, we're going to tally it up, see if we would have bet this theoretical dollar, how much money we would have ended up with. And whoever has the most money after the game is going to win that first week. Tyler, do you just want to go back and forth on these in terms of,
I think we both just present our full bet, our full line.
all right, you want to be first up or me?
I fear that we're going to be pretty similar, so I kind of want to be the one that announces them first. So I'm going to go first
Okay, go
for
for it.
these bets. I have four that I like. These are all opening night based. We're excited to get the Jazz season started, so I wanted to have something additional to root for right from the game one instead of going kind of for all the games in this week. I have four bets. Am I going to make all of them? So I wanted to only do plus odds. I have no minus odds in my bets here today. So starting off with my first bet, I'm going to be putting 40 cents of my dollar on this bet.
Okay.
And that's Clippers money line parlayed with the over. For
Okay.
those unfamiliar with betting, money line is just to win. So I'm betting the Clippers to win and that the total points in the game scored by both teams will be more than 226 points. I think that's pretty good. That's a plus 140 odds on FanDuel. Last I checked here on Tuesday night. 40 cents on that. 40 cents on this second bet. Bryce Sensabaugh to score 15 or more points. I think we've been talking about how Bryce Sensabaugh is a beast and how he's looked good really since the end of last year. I'm going to bet that that continues into opening night, 15 or more points, plus 162. And then I'm putting my final 20 cents that the Clippers will be leading the ball game after every quarter. So every quarter, the Clippers have more points than the Jazz at that point. That is plus 112. And that is how I will spend my opening night dollar betting the Utah Jazz.
I like it. I like it. We actually didn't have nearly as much crossover as I thought we were going to have, which is
Let's go.
great. Although we did have crossover on the first bet. I have four bets that I'm going to be taking, two with minus odds, two with plus odds. And the first one, I'm putting 40 cents on this bet, which I'm just taking the over 226 and a half points. That's the bet. I think the Clippers offense is good. I think the Jazz defense is bad. And I think the Clippers are going to want to make a statement in their first game of the season. So going over 226 for me at minus 114 odds was a pretty clear value play for me. I'm also going to put 30 cents on my guy that I just spoke a love letter to in the first segment, Walker Kessler. Um, I think that the Jazz are going to want to get him going immediately. He only played the one preseason game, and I think especially against a guy like Zubac and with all of the lengthy guys that the Clippers have, I think he's going to score a lot in the first quarter. So I'm taking the over Walker Kessler scores 2.5 points in the first quarter at minus 114, putting 30 cents on that. My third bet is for the best player on the Jazz. I'm putting 20 cents on this. Um, this is Markkanen 8 plus rebounds, plus 310. So this is a bit of a lengthier odd bet, but I just think with Hendricks still being a little bit inexperienced, we mentioned how few games he's played. And then just with, some of our bigs, we're not exactly sure how well they're going to be able to rebound. I think Markkanen is just going to be a bit of a do-it-all guy. I think he's going to be actually in the paint quite a bit on defense, just with the personnel that the Clippers have. So I think he's going to get a lot of opportunities. So I thought the plus 310, 8 plus rebounds was good value on that bet. And now my last one, I always like to throw a little something out there. Theoretically, we're in Utah, we can't bet. But I always like to throw a little bit of money at something that would just be awesome if it happened, even if it's just a little bit. So I'm putting 10 cents on Walter Clayton Jr., 6 plus assists.
Okay.
Those odds are plus 600. So if I get it, that would be a massive win for me. And I think it's actually possible. I mean, like I personally think the odds for this should have been closer to around plus 450, plus 500. I just think he's going to play quite a bit of minutes, and I think he's going to get some opportunity, to get some easy assists. So I just thought that was a good value bet for the rookie off the bench.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have two that could hit big for you, and I could see either happening. And then, but you bet most of your money on minus odds. I mean, we're both tied into this over, so
Yeah. Watch,
and
they're
we
going to
both
score like
put
225, and we're just going to be, dang
yeah,
it.
we both put 40 cents on it, so we'll see how that goes for us.
All right. Well, Kyler, I cannot wait for those of you who are watching this day of the Utah Jazz play tonight. We are like I am so excited than I have been in probably 3 or 4 years for opening night of the Jazz. And I'm going to be sitting here with my little note of theoretical bets and my notepad as we get ready to bring you more information on the Jazz and how they're doing next week. This has been another episode of the Upper Bowl Perspective. Go Jazz, and we'll see y'all next week, everyone.
See ya.